Welcome back to Year One Podcast. And if you're tuning in for the first time, you're choosing a great episode to join us. I'm Gavin Farnan, and joining us as always, the insightful trio, Micah Mcneil, Felipe
And we
Segura,
back.
We're doing.
and Zachary Crilley. So today we're steering our conversation into the heart of a topic that is very important but often overlooked, which is the importance of long-term games with long-term people. And I don't know about you guys, but when I thought about this phrase, I immediately thought about Charlie Munger, and God rest his soul. He died about a month ago, and Warren Buffett. They were friends and business partners for almost 60 years. I mean, that's triple the amount we've been alive. And they kept it going for that long. We're prosperous, some of the wealthiest people on the planet. I just want to know how the hell did they keep that going, and what do you think that took?
Yeah, I can hop in real quick. I think that, constitutes the sort of three things: the importance of relationships and then other endeavors such as making money or learning. I think with both Charlie and Warren, that's exactly what they did. It was two buddies who were trusted each other and worked together for a super long time. And in that time period, whether it was their, specific endeavor and that was making money, but they continuously learned. And that led to some of their success. And I think that's, what does that say, about like sort of the direction that, people should take in general and the things that really matter. And that's relationships, making money, and your health, right? And I think all those two, I mean, Charlie, rest his soul, he was, drinking Cokes. That's what they do all day. They eat McDonald's, and that's what Warren does every day. But because they're doing something that they love and they're doing with individuals that they trust and they're doing it for a long time, it compounds, and it pays dividends. And so nods to both of them, obviously, and rest in peace, Charlie.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something to be said that like they kept it going well into their 90s. Like when you think of, oh, like this is the person I'm going to work next to from 20 and then retire at 65 or whatever, like you go, okay, like you think of that, but that's something different when it's someone that stays for so long. Like we're not even close to living 40 years, any of us here. And like, that's how long their friendship, was or plus from that. And I think when you actually like break it down, it's because they found something that they're passionate about and they both were on like the same journey. So, uh,
And to your point, we started with the conversation long-term games with long-term people. In my opinion, people is greater than the game. And they're such a great example of that because how many different business ventures were they involved with? I couldn't tell you, probably dozens, if not hundreds. I'm sure there are some where they looked at each other and they're like, what are we doing here? We're in the trenches. This stinks. And then there were others where it was probably sunshine and rainbows and every day was great. Um, and we all know anecdotally examples of people being the reason that we get through difficult times, whether that's through athletics or business or school or family situations. That it's really people that are greater than the game. So that's a great way to open up this conversation with talking about the people and to build on what we were talking about last week in terms of community as well.
Yeah. Sorry. And yeah, no, exactly. And I think the undertone thing to all of that is trust, right? Like with Warren and Charlie being an example and just everyday examples, it's if you have that underlying trust, then you can work from there. There's less animosity, right? Going forward, you're not gonna try to get the better end of the stick or get the piece of the pie. The pie's gonna expand. And that's the importance of being with people within relationships and doing them for a long time. And I think it alludes to a lot of things. For instance, if you meet a great woman one day. I know we all aspire to do that, and you guys have a great relationship and you guys grow, and then you guys have kids, and then you start a family. That's compound interest, right? On having great relationships. So I think that's, super important to look at and in everything. So
So how are you guys? I guess I have a question. How are you guys usually like looking then for kind of those long-term people, right? And I mean, this is outside of like dating, right? But like, finding your Charlie Munger, to your Warren Buffett or whatever, right? Um, I always like to think of it as, okay, you have to find something that you guys have both in common, right? So I think it used to be like you had your like local church or whatever, and you like met someone through that, and like you guys kind of had like something similar. Or I know in like New York, like it used to be like same people from the same region like immigrated to the same neighborhood, and so like you kind of had like very similar backgrounds. But I feel like nowadays it's a little bit tougher. It's a little different. How are you guys going about it?
Honestly, I think that it comes down to finding your own passion. Like in creating a great relationship, it takes in a lot of ways a lot of introspection on yourself and just being like, okay, what do I value? And finding out if that person has that same value system, but also I think it comes down to the ego a lot. Like if you look at Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett, they must have had very level heads and not like, oh, look at me, I'm more successful than you. But then look at Steve Jobs and Wozniak, where yeah, they created a great company, but their relationship suffered because Steve Jobs had a ginormous ego and Wozniak just wanted to write code all day. And I feel like that created a divide there. But I think that's the two things, like the values and then the ego.
I, 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 an all-encompassing way to describe what we're all saying, in my opinion, is strongly held values and shared values, whether those values are faith-based, whether those values are community-based, whether it's a worldview. But that's the glue that will hold any relationship together, is the shared values and understanding where each other come to the table, and having that shared background that you can depend on. It's like a root system for a tree.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just like, it's curious to me because like I'm starting to see a lot of these like things like come out every year. I'm like in the professional world, right? Like the other day I went to a conference on mimetic theory, right? Like I liked that political thought or that philosophical thought. And so I went there, and then you meet a bunch of people that are also like very interested in the same thing. And it's like you probably would have never been friends with that person except that you both like really like that one thing. And then it kind of like transitions over into like, oh, okay, like maybe we can work together, or maybe like we can have like a long-term friendship. I just think that it's interesting when like it's kind of obvious, right, talking about it, but like it's very difficult to find those opportunities almost. I don't know.
I find that the people come up as needed, and this is the age. We're in our young 20s, we're now collecting people. I mean, we're going to talk about the long-term games aspect of this, but the long-term people is what we're investing in now. Who knows? I mean, Felipe, we had been in the same room, but I had never had a conversation with you, and now this comes up. And
True.
who knows, when we started having our conversations, that it would lead to this, and God knows what it will lead to in the future. And I think that's part of the beauty of, and the who knows of youth, is collecting these wonderful people around you, and let's see what happens.
no, I think that's a perfect example. Like imagine, Zach, you and I didn't know each other that well in high school, but I'd always admired you from afar. And what bar were we at in DC? And I came up, I was like, Zach, let's hop on a call one day. And what has that led to? That's led to this. So again, sort of touching on a little bit of what we started with, or talked about last episode of that community, I think that's, sort of quintessential, and we're trying to find that, and that's the beauty of the youth, is putting yourself around the things that you want. I mean, they do it in Silicon Valley, right? You have this, little Mcneil Park. It's small, but you have this faction of people who are, want something. They want to create something, and you see it. It's geographically focused in this one area. Now it's obviously growing throughout the United States, but it's that sort of exposure to the things that you sort of want in the world, and then you want to, see your outputs and then see the output that you actually want.
Yeah, I guess what everything we've said as an example like has in common is like you have to show up. Like 90% of life, you got to show up. Like you have to get out of the door, show up to the bar, Micah, to meet Zach, or like me and Micah, like we met essentially in just kind of like a friend's almost like getaway, right? Or whatever, like trip. And like
Hmm.
you have to have your beliefs, your thoughts, you have to wear it on your sleeve kind of thing. Like, and just like show your cards to people and say like, this is what I believe. It's probably going to put off a lot of people, but it's probably also going to like attract a lot of people too, right? So
Felipe Segura, show up to the bar. That's your,
show up.
that's your but that's a
Did
great
you
point, and
become
that's
alcoholics or
that's
no?
I
You're
mean,
not
this is more
promoting that.
conceptual, but that's something I've been thinking a lot about. Is I mean, I've had experiences in my life, especially recently, of some some things unfolding that I could have never have planned, and I'm wrestling with in my own mind. Okay, how much do I uh, embrace the uncertainty of the unknown and the greater plan versus how much do I kind of try to force it? How much do I kind of try to show up, and how does that work? How does that equalize in the long term and in the short term?
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that, right? Because you're thinking about like forcing it. When you're forcing it in a way, that's being like Machiavellian, right? Like that's like you're trying to manipulate like the outcome. And like when you're talking about friendships and long-term relationships, it's not, you can't like force it because like sure you can like probably get something going the first time, but like if it's not meant to be, you know what I mean? Like if you're not really meant to be like a match, right, for business or whatever, like it's just not going to work over the long haul, right?
Exactly. In the long term, there's just going to be animosity, just dysfunction. It's never going to be just organic. And that's the truth. I think, roping it back into what we started with Charlie, and Warren, there had to be of no, like, maybe little animosity at times or differences in opinions, but relatively it was sort of, it's definitely not linear, but it was relatively pretty good. They, sort of understood each other, and that's important in any relationship or any endeavor in which you have to work with other people, right? Like if you want to be successful, I'm sorry, you could be the best coder in the world. You can, probably come up with something on your own, but you're never going to be as successful. You have to really be successful. I think, and this is obviously not from experience, but from speaking with people who are successful or who I deem, in my subjective mind as successful, they had to work with other people. And that, I think that's one of the quintessential things that, you look forward, in playing long-term games, long-term people.
Yeah, and Felipe, to what you said earlier about like it's getting more difficult to find these people, and with online interaction becoming so common, our circles seem to be bigger, but in a lot of cases, those like valuable relationships seem to be harder to come by. And with what we're talking about here, it's like, okay, if you find those people, then how do you not get distracted by a new shiny opportunity? And to what Zach, you said, you have all these things coming in at once. Like, which one do you choose? And it almost seems like it's a gut feeling. There's really no ones and zeros to it, but it just feels right.
Yeah, I I agree wholeheartedly with your last point, and frankly, I think that's the anecdote or the answer to the balance between striving versus surrendering. In a sense, is hey, just follow your intuition, and that you have to have trust that that will guide you. I do reject the concept of it's harder to find people of similar mindset now. I understand there's an illusion of endless people, and the internet can certainly bolster that illusion. But I think, in fact, I know if you intend to build a relationship with someone, or if you're intending to build a relationship with people that align for whatever purpose, let's take the business case, because that's typically what our conversations are centered around. You can do that. I mean, that it's really possible. And obviously I'm biased from my own opinion, but this week I've had calls with probably 7 kids, young people that are running their own business or in the process of doing that. And I think that it's a really easy fallback to say, oh, our times and these different factors make it difficult to find these people. No, they're out there and they want to be found.
Yeah, no, I think it's the desire, Zach. I think, that's the underlying thing. There's just a lot of individuals who actually don't want to go seek out those, our lives are so insulated and so digital now, right? Like it used to be, if you wanted to go meet a girl, you would go to a bar and go, connect with her. But now it's you just go on one of the dating apps and swipe right or left. Right. And that's one of the, protruding things that we have in our society, right? If you want food, you used to have to go out and go make it for yourself, but now you just go to Uber Eats. So there's all these examples of people just not wanting to go out and actually go do those things that they want to do.
Yeah,
So
I think that that's looking at it from like a problem mindset instead of a solution mindset of like, yeah, there's more barriers, sure. But frankly, it's like I think that it's really, at the end of the day, it's on you. Like if
mhm,
you're let's take the dating example now. If you're constantly swiping and you meet great girls, but you pass them up because you think that there's an endless supply, that's on you at the end of the
mhm,
day. Sure, you can blame social factors, you can blame regression in the religious tradition and the traditional values of women, or these dating apps or this, but you're the one making the decision.
right.
And that's hard for people to understand. And for me, like, nobody likes to be told like, oh, your shortcomings are on you. But in a way, that's the most empowering answer, because if they're on you, then you can change it. If
Right.
it's all due to society, then it's out of your hands, and you're kind of just shit out of luck, for lack of a better term.
Mhm.
So I really think it is empowering to tell people, no, it is on you and you can change it.
Yeah,
Life's a single player game.
I do think though there is something like different going on. Like, and the example I think of is my brother. He started his company with, like, I think he was his boss at the time when he was working in consulting. And like the way that those conversations happen, like my brother had an idea and he said like, oh, do you want to join? Is like, you used to show up to the office and you got to know the person like more authentically, because like it's lunchtime. If you're in a virtual setup, like you don't have virtual lunch with one of your coworkers usually. Like I mean, I haven't had one of those personally, but like it's much easier to be like a person, right? Like, and like have that side of like, oh yes, I'm an employee here at the company, but I'm also, I have these interests, and I read about this or whatever, right? So while I agree with you, Zach, in terms of it is easier now to find people, I think it is harder in a sense, in the fact that you have to make the decision of like, okay, I'm going to be intentional about what I am trying to do and like find those people. Because I think in a certain sense, like when you meet on Zoom, I mean, I was listening to Zuckerberg talk about this. Like the problem is that we're not actually looking at each other in the eyes. We're looking at the camera. And so like you actually, your brain doesn't like understand that as much. And like it doesn't make like the personality, like you don't feel like you're actually in front of someone. And so I do think that in a sense, that is like a struggle in a sense of like, you do have to be intentional in a way that you weren't before, maybe. But if you are, I think you have massive advantages because, yeah, I mean, you have the internet, you're connected to like almost everyone in the world, you know?
I hear you, and I agree. In so many ways, our society is less personal, and things are different now. Things have changed 100%. My point is, easier or harder, what does it matter? I mean, we
Yeah.
still have the same goal. We're going to have to figure out a way to get there. We can sit here all day and talk about why it's harder, or we can figure out how to adapt to where we are and make it work.
Yeah. I just, I look at it sometimes as like, okay, the rules are changing and like there aren't a lot of people talking about like what are the new rules, right? Like because I do think post COVID we've like gone through something weird. Like and you know what, it's only been 2 years or 1 year depending on who and like how they treated COVID, like where people are like adjusting to this new reality. And yeah, I agree. I mean, you have to 100%, you know, get in front of it.
And to that, I think people are starting to make up their own rules. I mean,
Right.
I think COVID threw in a lot of questions of like, what even are the rules? And okay, why do I want to conform to somebody's set of rules? Who made this set of rules? That was one of the biggest takeaways of the Elon book is he would go to wherever SpaceX and they'd be, oh, why is this gauge here? Oh, because it's the rules. Who made the rule? What's their
Mhm.
name? And if it doesn't make sense, kick it out. And I think like that's I hear you and I understand, and it is interesting, and I think it can lead to some fruit to look at the difficulties in a changing situation. But at the end of the day, it's like if one must be solution oriented if they want to move forward. Otherwise, they can spend a lifetime looking at external factors for why they're not finding what they want to find.
And I do feel like in a lot of these conversations, like it's always gonna be on you. And with these decisions that we make in terms of a partnership or a business idea or really anything, it's all gonna be on you, and that's based on how you want to look at it. And like in this conversation of not being distracted and just staying on the path, that's again just on you to do that and to find those people and to work with the new rules as they are. And I guess moving forward, like how have those rules changed?
Wait,
And
let me jump in. Let me jump in real quick. I think that what Zach said is I totally align with it. There are no fucking rules. Come in and break shit and make your own rules. I totally align more with that. 100% with anything. And I think COVID did do that. I know it did it for me. And I think there's a lot of people that are starting to really understand that sort of these novelties of what society tells us, these societal lies. Like I think for all of us that really hit, like everyone in our generation, was when we were at home for that extended period of time. It was like, all right, so my parents or I'm taking out student loans, but I'm at school and I'm learning online, but yeah, I'm still paying $70,000 to go to this school.
University.
Um, can I sit back and can I learn this stuff like just without the school entity in general? Um, yeah, maybe, potentially, yes, right? So it was, that's one of the lies I think society potentially tells people is that you send your kids to school and they're going to learn, but not necessarily. So I think because of COVID, that and on top of everything, like belief in institutions, some of the conversations that we have allows you just to like sit back and be like, no, there are no rules. Like you go make them for yourself. The rules that matter to you. And start from there. Sorry.
No, I love that. And that's what I mean, that's such a core belief of mine is a high degree of individualism, and that's what I think is the part of America that's truly exceptional is the high degree of individualism and the ability to kind of course your own path and make your own fate. And I don't mean to like I don't want to argue with you guys or like make you feel like your points that you're making are not valid. I get it. Yeah, it's harder. Like Zoom lunch. Are you kidding me? What a terrible concept that is. And it's you're 100% right, and it's 100% true that things are changing. Maybe it's getting harder. Maybe it's getting easier. That's a conversation. But at the end of the day, it's just like, okay, so what? Like, do you still want it? Yeah. Okay, then figure out how to do it.
But do you
Amen.
think it would be a disservice to ignore those changes and just do
No,
it?
I don't think no, I think it's a disservice to focus on changes. And no, maybe not to focus too much. I think it's a disservice to focus on all the reasons why you can't do what you know deep down that you want to do. And that's, I mean, it's such an unpopular opinion in society nowadays because it really is more comforting to say I'm not who I want to be because of that and because of whatever, the government, God, my brother, my parents, my background, my class, my education, whatever. But at the end of the day, you have to go to sleep with yourself. I mean, and I really truly believe that it is an empowering thing to tell people that they are in control, because then they can change.
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like that and focusing on the changes are different. Like you can kind of plan for an event and say it's Zoom classes or some other change, then you'd be at an advantage if, for example, you like dropped out of school and were like, oh, I can just learn all of this stuff online. And then you just, in a way, won. And that could have been you, yeah, taking it on yourself, saying, I can do this, without anybody's help. Like it's up to me to learn. And that would be advantageous to plan for that.
Well, I mean, right. Fundamentally, this is like an act of faith, what you're talking about, right? Which is like, I'm empowered to do this. And like when you have no prior evidence that you are empowered to do something, right? Like it's, okay, I'm going to do this. Like I'm going to make this business. And while like everyone's talking about blockchain and AI, like I saw, like people talk about like there's holes in the porta potty, like what's it like porta potty business. Like apparently it's like it's booming. Like if you like, because not a lot of people do it, and like you make great business doing that, and you're like, I'm empowered, I can do it. You're kind of having faith that like, all right, this is gonna work for 1, 2, 3 years, right? Over like what everyone else is talking about constantly and whatever, right? So yeah.
Yeah, I can be brief here, but I think you have to look past what is the societal norm or what the rules are at that moment. I mean, just look at anyone who's like ever done something immensely great in industry. Like look at Elon. I mean, he flies rockets that can land themselves. You think that was going on in NASA 30 years, 40 years ago? No. But he had to see past what was already present. Um, I could come up with a million examples, but I think you have to just really see what you want and know what you want, and then not conform to whatever you're seeing that's in that present day.
Totally. And
Yeah.
that comes into now we're getting into like the long-term games aspect of it.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to me to think about, okay, how do you define a successful game? And the equation I came up with was a strong vision, like what you're talking about, Micah, and a strong sense of progress. Strong vision and strong sense of progress makes you feel happy with the game that you're on. And I know, speaking from my perspective, like the burnout comes when your feeling of progress stops, when you don't feel like you're moving forward anymore. Some of the most exciting, fulfilling days that I've spent were when I was doing a delivery service, and me and my best friend, my childhood best friend, would wake up at 5 a.m. and go all day and crash in bed at night. But I would never describe myself as feeling burnt out, because we had that strong vision and we had that strong sense of progress. Every day we felt like we were moving forward. And in my opinion, that's what defines a successful game. And it's really figuring that out. And then there's times where it's in all things in life. There's times where the lights turn on, the switch flips, and sometimes you're like, oh my gosh, like, what am I really doing here? Is this something that I feel like I have a strong vision on? And you need both components of that to have a successful equation. And frankly, that's something that I'm working through now, is like, okay, what in my case is a strong vision that I'm okay dedicating 1, 2, 5, 10, 20 years to a real long-term game. And it's the vision and then the sense of progress.
And that's the hard part, is finding out exactly what you want. And I think it could even be summed up as, if you know what you want, the way you can tell if you got it is if you got what you wanted out of life, right? That's how you know you were successful. If you can, lay your head down and know you actually got somewhere. And I think that's, sort of what that end product that you're alluding to, that I resonate with.
Yeah, I think that the focus on the journey is so important. If you're just focused on the end the entire time, that's never going to be a long-term game where you're going to enjoy. Like, if you can only get excited about that and not tomorrow and today's work, it's going to be pretty tough to do that for 5 to 10 years and commit everything you have to it.
I actually disagree.
You do.
I disagree that, like, if the journey is the thing that you're on, but that goal of what you want is actually what you really want. You just don't want it handed to you. But like, if you worked all that, like if your journey went all the way, went for 10, 15, 20, 30 years, the rest of your life, and you never got that end product, what are you sort of left with?
You're left with the journey to enjoy.
Yeah, but the journey's not going to give you what you actually want, right?
But I feel like that is the difference between desire and like being okay where you are. Because if you put this thing, whatever you want, on a pedestal, and that's what you're chasing the entire time, and then it turns out that wasn't really that fulfilling, then what are you doing for those 30 years? Like, that thing is what you're committing to.
I'm gonna agree with Zach on that, or sorry, Gavin, with that, actually, because like, I think as long as the thing that you're going for is like, you think it's worth the like attempt of trying to like achieve it, then I think like and you have like a good time in the process, I don't think you'll like ever regret it. Because like, if you achieve what you were looking for and then you're like, okay, I'm done, like I solved cancer, like say you solved it at like 40, like I don't know, like I feel like you would be super depressed, like just afterwards, even if you did like the most miraculous thing like of humanity, like, and I just think that that's because like you can't like not have a goal that you're going towards and being like in progress of achieving that.
That's fair. I guess what I would say, I'm not saying that there's not beauty in the journey, but I'm saying if you're, and I agree with you, Gavin, that if that thing, that one thing that you want so much and you work so hard for it and you just get that thing, that's not necessarily going to make you happy. I think there's nuance and context to it, but I guess more of what I'm saying is, if you want something and you know what that thing is that you really want, and you work so hard and that you don't get that, I don't think there's that much beauty in the journey. But I see that you guys push back on that, and I understand that. I can respect that.
Yeah, it's just difficult, because when you look at something you want it's very materialistic at that point. And it's really just a thought in your mind. You have no idea how that's going to make you feel once it's achieved. And for me, it's like, okay, what would you do for free? And you'd love every second of it. And I think that's a lot of what it comes down to of the day to day, because that's who you're going to live with for the rest of your life is you every single day. And whatever
100%.
you're doing, then that's what you should be enjoying. But it's, I'm not saying that's not easy or that it's easy to find that thing, but to enjoy what you're doing is ultimately how to come up with a long-term game, I think.
Yeah, I guess I said it wrong. The first question is, what do you want? Right? If you want the Greenwich home and the vacation house in Barbados or whatever, then you'll probably get that. That's not what I'm saying. Take that out. Actually find to what you just said, what you would do for free. That's something that's like that's what you really want. And if you can do that and you can have like an end product of something like that you can tangibly hold on to, then that's what I think that you really want. I think that's how I was trying to say it. I misspoke a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Figuring out how to love the ride and love the destination as well. And it's interesting too, because I mean, the whole nother conversation is like, what's most effective? And I'm starting to think more and more like falling in love with the ride is more effective, because then you'll wake up one day and you're at the destination, as opposed to falling in love with, Micah, you pointed out, like the material side of things. That just seems so foundationless to me. And that seems like setting yourself up for a life spent on the treadmill of hedonism of, oh, I have this, now I want that, now I want this, now I want that. And that doesn't seem like one I would want to live.
Yeah, I don't think you ever want to close your eye. Like, I think the main thing is you'd ever want. I remember my coach told me my JV basketball, like, if you guys don't think you're gonna make the suicide, close your eyes and just like keep running, and then like maybe you make it, maybe you don't. But like, I always think about like that's always the worst thing that can happen. Like, you never want to be like going through a goal and being like having your eyes closed and being like, all right, just like once I get there, like I'll be okay, like I'll be happy. And then it's like you get to that goal and then you're like, oh shit, well I didn't really like think about it because like I still have like all these like things that I need to figure out, and like, okay, well I'll do like, and then you keep doing the same thing because like I think you like get a habit of closing your eyes and just being like, I'm gonna do the thing and never enjoy it. Like I actually think that like can happen. So yeah, I don't know. I think that's like, for me, that's like the red area. Like you do not want to go to. Yeah.
And I feel like there's this weird thing about human psychology of you have to go through struggle and suffer to get what you want. And that's something that I struggle with a lot is like, okay, I'm going to have to do 80-hour weeks for 2 years in order to be a successful entrepreneur. But I'm just realizing that is just not the case. And you have to understand how to get from A to B in the most efficient way possible while enjoying it too. And just putting yourself and dragging yourself through the dirt is just going to set you up for not being where you want to be.
Wait, question. Do you agree with the notion that suffering is intrinsic to humans or not?
I think that it is, yeah.
Oh,
Absolutely.
okay. I thought you were saying that it isn't.
I
Sorry.
think a lot of times people associate the amount of suffering you go through with the end result.
And who defines what suffering is, right? Okay, let's take the 80-hour a week entrepreneurial example. Like, come on, some of that is so fun, and spending the time doing the hard
Exactly.
work, that's not suffering.
It's being grateful. I don't know. If you're grateful for the suffering, like it's like, okay,
Yeah,
that I think makes all the difference. Yeah.
which isn't easy. It's not easy to be running the for your JV basketball coach, or doing things, getting yelled at by customers or by your boss or by your wife or by anybody. and being like, oh, I'm going to enjoy the suffering. Of course you're going to fall, but if that's your North Star, and if you can learn to fall in love with that, boom, welcome to enlightenment.
Yeah. I mean, for like do you guys know David Goggins?
Yeah, I saw him
Yeah.
yesterday.
Wait, you
What?
saw him in person?
No, on his
Uh,
UFC fight.
Uh,
Sorry, I should
But
have.
that guy, for some reason, I kind of like idolize him, but also don't like that way of thought of just, oh, do this, do that, discipline, discipline, discipline. But I know through life experience that the things that brought me suffering and pain and struggle, but I knew I wanted and strove for that thing, that gave me a lot of fulfillment. So it's this balance between, okay, what will you be willing to work for and find that joyful?
yeah, and it's choosing what you want to make progress in, and what you want to suffer in as a result. Like, if we were trying to maximize suffering, all of us would be living out on the street right now, like scavenging for food at every time. And for me, that's not what I'm optimizing for. But a story's coming to mind that somebody told me recently, about how somebody who was on a more spiritual journey did that, and they found some great truth out of it. Great. So for us, what do we want to suffer in? What do you want to suffer in? Something physical? Micah can speak to that. Something
Yeah.
business wise. Choose your path and go.
Yeah. And maybe that's something the listeners can think about is, all right, what do you think about suffering, and when did you feel like you were going through a hard time, but then you got through it and you realized that was extremely valuable. But I think that is a good conclusion to the podcast, and we will see you next week.
Wait,
Episode.
let's give a quick nod to Zach and being included in the Business Journal of Washington, D.C. 25 under 25.
Thank you.
Clap it up, clap it up.
hey,
Thank you.
Thank you. He says that so humbly. Look at him.
Yeah, I mean, I acknowledge I'm grateful for the recognition, and I also acknowledge the fact that we were talking about not putting too much value on external validation very recently. So I'm very aware of keeping my values internally driven.
Yeah.
But I appreciate it. Thank you.
Beautiful. And that wraps up episode 8. See you, boys.
See ya.